Good afternoon and good morning or good evening to all of you who are attending the BBW Paradigm Shift webinar series. I'm hosting here out of Antwerp this time, so in Belgium, a major harbor port and importer of key energy input for Europe. So with BBW, for a very brief reminder, beyond Bretton Woods, we are trying to revisit the international financial architecture since the initial Bretton Woods Treaty was signed about 80 years ago, through the lens of the poly crisis with several concurrent crisis moments that are impacting our overall financial architecture, and trying to come up with recommendations that are making a dent into our predicament. With the Paradigm Shift webinar series, we're trying to focus in and tune into some specific topics. And today, we are really blessed and very, very fortunate to have among our midst Mr. Ramón Mendez Galain, and he is the former Secretary of or Undersecretary of Energy at Uruguay. And he will be interviewed by moderator Sofía Martínez. Sofía will be introducing Ramón in a couple of minutes. I will do the introduction very shortly of Sofía. And so the topic of today is rewriting the rules of the global energy system to enable the energy transition. So what this webinar will be focusing on is actually at the governance, financial, and institutional reforms that are needed to really dismantle the gridlock that the fossil fuel industry holds onto our energy system and really scale and speed up the decarbonization. And I also am very lucky, consider this to be a very opportune moment as this webinar has taken place about a month since the Santa Marta conference took place. Santa Marta was a conference, intergovernmental governance, organized by both Holland, the Netherlands, and Colombia to actually, this is the first fossil-free conference to actually discuss and how to speed up this decarbonization process. So with that, I would love to introduce Sofía. Sofía is already a very prominent member of the steering committee of Beyond Bretton Woods, but Sofía is also a senior expert in climate, energy, and sustainable finance, with more than 2 decades of international experience. She has worked with the European Commission, with the United Nations, the private consultancy and civil society, leading policy and cooperation initiatives worldwide. And so her work brings her together amongst climate diplomacy, or brings together climate diplomacy, finance, and program delivery, always with a strong global perspective. She also has recently rejoined IDIA, so this is the Spanish energy agency, and where she works on international relations. Please take it away, Sofía. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you, Beyond Bretton Woods, for putting this together and trusting me to moderate this session with my dear friend and colleague, Ramón Mendez. I think I first will start by introducing Ramón, because we think that this is a great opportunity of having someone like Ramón. He's not just a thinker, he's a doer. As Frank said, he served as Secretary of State for Energy in Uruguay from 2008 to 2015, if I get it correct, Ramón. And we will talk about Uruguay during our conversation, so I'm not going to mention the huge success that this was. And of course, he has done many other things in his life, and he founded, after his tenure, Asociación IBI, to replicate the model of Uruguay, or to help others in replicating the model across Latin America and the Caribbean and other regions. And since 2028, he's also elected president of REN21. For those not familiar with the network, is the Renewable Energy Policy Network for the 21st century, representing over 100 institutions across the world. Ramón has received the Climate Breakthrough Award in 2025, and he's not just an advocate, he's a practitioner. I'm he really knows what he's doing. So it's my pleasure to have this conversation with you, Ramon, and welcome all of you to this webinar. The conversation is with Ramon. So I will briefly say something and then I will start asking you not that difficult questions, I hope, but interesting ones. I was wondering if I should be start by talking about the elephant in the room and what is in the news every day, and I decided not to start with that, but to focus on something that really bothers me when we're talking about the transition and we talk about energy. This is not really a transition. This is more a transformation. And we usually talk that the transition is well underway. We have record renewables, record investment, and it seems to be going well, at least in some parts of the world. Costs are going down, solar particularly, but not only. But not all of this is true. Fossil fuels still provide most of the energy worldwide. Not energy is not just electricity, is much more than electricity. And when you look at the total energy system, the picture is fossil heavy. So this is where we are. And we have an infrastructure that was built for providing energy using fossil fuels, and this is it. The exit from this system can be complicated or very, very complicated. So this is what carbon locking means. It's not just a metaphor. It's a question of balance sheets and what companies and banks are doing. So the question is whether we know what needs to happen, that we do. The question is what it actually takes to break this logic, because we are also suffering a heat wave all over Europe and in many other places, and El Niño is coming. So, and we know that fossil fuels cause this. And I don't want to make this a climate issue. This is an economic and social issue. So to start with a series of questions, because I think I took already too long and I could start rambling around different issues, I didn't mention that Ramon is a physicist. So Ramon, I think it will be interesting to know how does someone, a scientist like yourself, move from science world to become a Secretary of State for energy. That's my first question for you.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Sofia, for your kind introduction. Thank you, Frank, for inviting me to having this opportunity to discuss with your network. So I'm very, very glad for being here with you today, and thank you for your first question, because I thought you were about to begin with a tough question, or what is going on, what happened, and what should we do in order to change what is going all over. But you just started beginning with a very simple question. In fact, yes, I'm a physicist. For 20 years, I've been a scientist. I was working in subjects far away from real life, as trying to understand what was the physics of the first microsecond of the universe after Big Bang, so completely aware of real life today. But in fact, what happened is that 20 years ago in my country, Uruguay, we're having very strong difficulties in the energy sector. And many people were talking about magic solutions, and that, for example, that we are nuclear power plant, we are going to solve all the problems we had in the country. I'm not against nuclear energy in principle, but I'm not against any source of energy in principle. But in fact, they are better than others. And so in that moment, I tried to use my training as scientist in order to focus on the problems that my country had. And in fact, what scientists are trained for is to face a complicated problem and try to find an original answer for that problem, an original solution, and these are new answers for that. And in fact, this is what I did. I began to just in my free times, I began to learn about the different energy sources. Then I rapidly understood that energy was not just technology, that it was not just about finance issues, it was also about climate, about social issues, about geopolitical issues, about even cultural and even ethic issues. So I rapidly understood that we needed to think out of the box because we really were going to a collision and a collision road, and that we needed to think out of the box into new things. And for us in our country particularly, the clear answer were renewables because of a bunch of reasons that we can talk in a few minutes. But it was clear that this was the best things that we can do, but we had to do it. It was not simple at all 20 years ago. And then I began to write things about my ideas on how to make it possible, how I could contribute to the overall discussion on how the country should change in order to avoid all the difficulties we were having at that moment. And for my surprise, my thoughts and what I have written reached the president. And one day I was in my office in the university and received a phone call. It was not the president himself, it was his secretary, asking me to be the new Secretary of Energy of the president. And it took me a time in order to leave my calm academic world, but I fortunately accepted. And I've been for more than 13 years in three consecutive governments. First as Secretary of Energy, then as Secretary of Climate Change. I've been the chief negotiator of Uruguay in the Paris Agreement in 2015. So I spent many years in this new world for me, which was the political world. But I'm very happy for having done that. So
Thank you, Ramon. And luckily, I mean, you have reminded us that you were also working on climate, because there is also this tendency of assuming that climate negotiations don't work. I think that they do. Otherwise, we will be in an even worse situation right now with the policies and regulatory frameworks, etc. But I think that, I mean, almost everyone knows that Uruguay was a success. Now is generating 99% of energy from renewables. Cost has decreased. Jobs has been created. So as you were saying, this is not an environmental or climate question. This is a social question, an economic imperative, and a moral imperative. That when we are talking, and maybe we will discuss about this later, about I don't really know a way of defining the world into advanced, less advanced, industrialized, global north, global south. I honestly don't know how to address this dichotomy, but I guess that all the audience and yourself could understand this. But the success in Uruguay, if you can tell us a little bit more about this transformation, how when you join office with those new ideas, this is a transformation, it's not just a transition. And how now you see others can resonate with what you have been doing in Uruguay and what you are doing now with EV and with others. Maybe that's an interesting question.
Well, this is the point. This is what I'm trying to do now. I'm running a nonprofit organization in order to share the lessons learned from our experience. And in fact, the lessons learned is that today, nowadays, I mean, there is no longer technology issues nor economic issues. Today, renewable energies are the best source that we can have for all our systems. So even if climate change didn't exist anymore, it magically disappeared, even though transition to renewables would be the best option for us. And this is, yes, this is due to climate change. Because of climate change, we as humanity made a lot of efforts to try to make mature the renewables as new technologies to solve the climate issue. And we succeeded because of this, now we know how to deal with variability of wind and solar. We know how to we succeeded to have a scale, and this scale reduce the cost. You know that solar PV has reduced its cost by a factor of 8 in 10 to 12 years. Wind had reduced the cost by a factor of 3. Batteries had reduced the cost by a factor of 10. So it has been divided by 10, the cost of producing a battery, in only 10 to 12 years. So today, renewables are the cheapest option compared to any kind of other way of producing electricity in all over the world, or almost in the large majority of countries all over the world. And at the same time, once again, we have solved all the technical issues. I mean, people used to continue saying that it's not possible to manage variability. This is not true. I mean, in Uruguay, we have, as you said, 98, 99% of renewables energy in the mix. And this is just because of the complementarity of different technologies. But in order to do that, we need to do really different things. As you were saying, going to renewables is not just changing one fuel to another fuel. It's just really completely redefining the energy sector, the energy system. We have to change. We needed to change the whole regulation, the institutional framework, the market design was absolutely redefined in our case. And in fact, I like to say that people are still thinking that it was not possible. It's not possible to deal with the variability. I mean, human engineering has succeeded to put a man in the moon more than 50 years ago. And they were trying to say that it was impossible to do something which is complicated, but much less complicated than putting a man in the moon. And so we did it. I mean, we're not simple, but we did it. And now we have 30, 40% of wind, for example, in our mix without a single battery. It's just with a combination of different and taking profit of the power of the new technologies. So in fact, what we understood is that with the present rules of the game, with the one that which are used all over the world, we cannot, I mean, renewables cannot express all the capabilities, all the possibilities, that we need to rethink the whole system in order to have the possibility to have renewables competing in the same footing with fossil fuels. And when we do that, when we do this, today renewables beat the fossil fuels. For example, in Uruguay, just because of the transition, we halved the cost of producing electricity. This is just a measure of how cheapest the renewables are today in comparison to traditional fossil fuels. And we have a completely stable cost of electricity because we do not depend on energy commodities anymore. So we're not suffering, for example, what is happening today in the Hormuz Strait. We haven't suffered the war in Ukraine because we are not affected by the variability of the cost of oil, on natural gas, on coal or whatever, because we don't depend on those variables which depends on geopolitical effects. So this brings us a lot of stability of the system, not only decreasing costs, but also stability of the system, which is a proof that the new system are better than the old ones. So as you were saying, Sofia, today, and this for us, and it is what we are trying to share all over the world, is that today we don't have neither a cost issue or technological issue. And today the driver is no longer climate. Climate is there, of course, but the driver today is economy, is development, and stabilization of the whole economy, not just of the energy sector. And this is what we are trying to share all over the world, that this is possible, but in order to do this, we have to dramatically change our power system and not just changing one fuel to another.
That's super, Ramon. And I'm talking about electricity, the power system, etc. We are getting there, but what's your view on the hard-to-abate sector, as we would like to call them, like industrial sector or transport or buildings? And here maybe it's a second question related to buildings, but also consumption, production, and then how the energy is consumed and how the population is using it. So it's these two sides of the same coin related to electricity, but not all the sectors are electrified. So any ideas?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in Uruguay, in general, what is better known is the power sector. Power sector, yes, 98, 99% of renewable. But the global power mix, as you were saying, is not just electricity. Electricity in general, all over the world, is 21% of the whole end user energy that we are consuming. 80% of the rest is heat, industrial heat, transportation, heating in housing and in buildings. So it's not just electricity. But in Uruguay, the interesting point is that 63 to 65% of the whole energy we're consuming is renewable. Because this is, once again, is the best for us, is the best, most convenient for us. Almost 80% of our industry is running with renewable energies, using mainly biomass waste and other kind of resources that used to be a environmental liability, and now they are an energy asset. And Uruguay is one of the country with the most share of EVs sold in the market. Last month, 51% of the new cars sold in Uruguay were EVs. In Uruguay, a small country here in the global south. So, I mean, we are the proof that if there are appropriate information for consumers, and if we take out the subsidies that are now having fossil fuels all over the world, then the consumers take the good decision. The good decision is, once again, that there is a new economy which is based in renewable energy, which is better than the old one. And this is because we have been evolving this during 2-3 decades, but we are seeing the results. I used to say, as an example, that except when I take planes, I'm a kind of decarbonized person, because I'm using both at home and office 99% renewable electricity. I heat both my house and my office with heat pumps, which runs with renewable electricity. I'm running an EV which is charged with renewable electricity, and I'm paying $4 to charge the battery, and with that I can run 500 kilometers. So, I mean, yes, we can now we have technologies and we have costs in order to have a decarbonized mix, which is better than the old one, for a lot of reasons I was explaining. But for that, you need to give consumers the correct information and to make the correct, to put in place the correct policies. What I'm meaning with that, we don't use to say as much as necessary that fossil fuels are still having today a tremendous subsidy. And it's not me which is saying that. It's not International Renewable Energy. It's not Greenpeace. It's the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. Every second year has a new report stating how high is the subsidy, public subsidy, to fossil fuels. And a couple of years ago, the subsidy was $1.4 trillion per year. Direct subsidy, 1.4 trillion. And this is a huge amount of money. This is, for example, 20 times GDP of a country like Uruguay. And this is the subsidy for one part of our economy, which is just fossil fuels. But if we consider not only direct, but also indirect subsidies, it's as high as $7 trillion per year. $7 trillion is 7% of the GDP, of global GDP. This means that 7% of all the everything that we're creating in economy all over the world, 7% of that is going to subsidize one particular sector of the economy. And that's why it's the IMF which is saying that, because it's a big problem for the economy. It's a huge issue for the economy. We were so dependent on fossil fuels that in order to face the appearance of this new technology based on renewable energies, that the answer of those sectors of the economy is asking more and more and more subsidies. And subsidies were only 300 billions 8 years from now. Now they are 1.4 trillions. So it's an incredible increase. When renewable costs are decreasing, fossil fuel subsidies are increasing. So this is the only way of maintaining this crazy system that we're having so far. And that's why, which explain the war in Iran, the invasion of what happened, for example, in Venezuela. So this is based on the geopolitics of the old fossil fuel industry, all the fossil fuel based world that we are trying to live right so far, because now we have a better world. But for that, we need to take the appropriate energy policies.
Thank you, Ramon. And I think that it gives us a very, very clear picture of what is happening and why this is striking, because there is money. Sometimes it's like, oh no, the transition is very, very expensive, but we are putting trillions of money into something that is not making use and is not functioning, because we are not getting increased energy access in many areas of the world thanks of fossil fuel extraction. We can go to Angola, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, or South Africa, or even in Latin America, where 100% access to electricity is still not granted. So we also have to tackle, and I hope I will make sense with these questions. Energy is growing, energy consumption in some parts of the world. It has to increase dramatically, and here we are talking about sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, and in other parts of the world, like Europe. I see it in here in Madrid, in Spain. We need to decrease our energy consumption. So that's two sides of the same coin. And you are rightly saying that the technologies are there. We know what we have to do. Renewables are cheaper. Still, we are flooding trillions of money into fossil fuels, but still the question is like, there is no money. There is no money to fund an energy program, solar plant in Africa or in some parts of Latin America. Why is this happening? Is it just finance, or is it something else? Because also we are talking beyond Bretton Woods institutions. So how do we frame this?
It's something else. Is the regulatory system. It's the market design of the energy system. Market design and regulatory framework has been built according to the characteristic of fossil fuels, and that's fine, because when they were built 40 years ago, renewables didn't exist, and fossil fuels were the best option for us. So it's fine. I'm not complaining. We have the rules of the game according to the characteristics of fossil fuels. That's fine. But now there are new technologies. Now there are new types of energy, and which is completely different. It has nothing to do thermal power plants based on with fossil fuels that you can turn it off and on whatever you want if you have the fuel, than with wind and energy that is just the wind and energy is there when nature decides to be there. It's not a human decision. So the rest of the system, hydro, particularly if you have it, batteries, or even thermal power plants, have to follow the variability of wind and solar. And this makes a completely different system than the ones that we're used to have today. So everything needs to be changed. And concerning the market design is based on the marginal cost of what is called the spot energy price, with resource adequacy, in general, in order to cope with the variability of what is called the missing money in the pure spot energy world, and so these worked very well when we had fossil fuels. But now we are dispatching more and more energy at zero cost, because wind and solar and even hydro are dispatched at zero cost, zero variable cost. So the role of the spot energy price is decreasing its sense in the modern markets, and the energy price, the spot price, is going up and down, and going more down than up. And so if an investor goes to in this market, is absolutely insecure market, and the cost for the risk for investors is becoming more and more important. There are called the cannibalization effect, which means that you can invest in let's say in wind on solar in a given place, but you don't know what is going to be the cost of the money you are going to receive, because you have no control at all on what is going to be the expected average spot energy price. So it's really a casino for investors today if they're going to enter in a system with higher shares of variable renewable energies. And the point is that today the new system are not longer, I would say, traditional industrial system, in the sense that they do not depend on a fuel to put there in order to generate electricity. They're just financial business, because the cost of electricity based on wind and solar, for example, is only based on paying back the investment. That's it, because the cost of operation and maintenance is tremendously low. There's no fuel to put in, so you just have to pay back the money. So, and this is a pure or almost pure financial business, and financial business are completely different than traditional energy business, which were based on buying a fuel in order to burn in your boiler. So what we understood is that we had to completely redefine the market design, and we went from the traditional spot energy market to long-term capacity markets. So investors compete for the market, do not compete in the market, which is a completely different issue. And on the same time, we understood that in order to avoid problems like, for example, that you had in the Iberia Peninsula in April. I mean, what last year April? What in Uruguay we have a system-wide view of the system, so we understand how the different technologies complement to each other and which is the best complementarity. So this system-wide planning of the system, which is then accompanied by bidding processes, technology by technology, in order to be sure that we have the best complementarity between sources. This was the clue for us. This was the clue in order to decrease costs, in order to assure that we had energy at any moment in any climate context, and this was the real reason why we decreased by a factor of 2 the cost of producing electricity. And this is why we became independent on global geopolitical issues. But for that, we really need to completely rethink the system design, the regulatory design, and the market design. And the experience, and just to answer your question, is that when you create the appropriate condition, money will come. We received $6 billion investment in only 4 years. We made a transition in only 4 years. We went from more than 50% fossil fuel share to only 1 to 2% fossil fuel share in only 4 years. $6 billion for a small country like Uruguay is 12% of the GDP. You in the audience are probably from different countries, but you can make the count. What is 12% of the GDP of your country? So imagine the impact in our country, in Uruguay, in receiving 12% of the GDP, $6 billion in only 4 to 5 years. It was a tremendous, and this was because we create the conditions. If you create the appropriate condition, money will flow. Money will come. Money is desperately looking for good business opportunity, and if it's going to build the new world, is even better. And now the renewable-based economy is ready to deliver, but we have to create the condition for money to come, and for doing this in a secure way in order to decrease risk perception by investors. And this is what we have to build all over the world.
That's great, Ramon. And I think that you explained very clearly that money is there and what is needed. So the reforms in the market, in the system, etc. But maybe I wanted to learn a bit more about the grid. How did you develop the grid? Because I'm impressed with the sales of electric vehicles in Uruguay, the grid, the large grid, but also the distribution grid that is usually also a bottleneck in the development of the system. And I've seen there are a couple of questions, and then we can go also with the audience.
There's one word that explains everything. It's a magic word, which is planning. Planning. We have forgot to plan. We thought that the market by itself can solve all the problems. And of course, the market can solve the problems, but we have to help market creating the appropriate conditions. If we not create the condition, if we not give the appropriate information, market cannot make magic. So we need to build a new market. And this is what happened from Korea to any developed country when market made the issue, but after creating the appropriate condition with public policies. And so what happened? The grid is part of the planning. Is at the planning part of the public policy. So in our case, we made a system-wide planning. System-wide planning means which is the best complementarity of lines over there, new network, new 150 kilovolt lines or whatever, and combining with the resource adequacy, with the resource availability in different points of the territory, in order to combine all of that, in order to have at the same time the lowest cost of the whole system, of the whole investment, and at the same time resource adequacy. And this is made with planning. So we developed a very powerful planning which would optimize the best complementarity of all investment that we need in a system, in a system-wide way. But if you separate the system transmitter on the one side, the system operator on the other, the utilities competing on the other side, the commercializer competing on the other side, system ancillary services competing on the other side, it's a big mess. Someone has to put all of this together.
Yeah.
And it's not just by competing everyone with everybody. This is not the solution. The new system are becoming more and more and more complicated. If we don't have a very clear planning of the whole, this would have made. So in our case, yes, of course, system planning included both grid planning and generation planning. And what was the best complementarity between all of this according to the present cost of the whole technologies? And this is crucial: planning plus.
My last question on this, on distribution and revenues for distribution and investment in distribution, because I've seen the bottleneck here in Spain, but in many other countries as well.
You need investment, that's for sure. I mean, but in any case today, electricity is the best option. That's why we're electrifying more and more than use of the energy. EVs are an example, but we're having more and more possibilities of electrifying industrial needs. And with heat pumps, we have more and more possibility of electrifying air conditioning and water conditioning in buildings. So we need energy, we need electricity. And for that we need to invest. But of course, if we are subsidizing natural gas in order to have heat water at home, I mean, you cannot make electricity to compete in the same footing. So we have to avoid, if instead of using public subsidies to continue the rule of fossil fuels, use the same money in order to invest, in order to make it possible for renewables to come. I mean, you will have a much better system.
Definitely. Thank you, Ramon. I think this has been great. And maybe, Frank, we should open the door for questions from the audience, because I've seen we have several already. If that's okay with you, Ramon. We
Yes.
have, I think that the first one, it's Darius. It's asking about, after Santa Marta conference and the call for transition plans, AI is rapidly advancing. Is there an opportunity to use AI to develop sovereign transition plans rapidly and at a low cost?
Well, sure. It depends which side you're taking this. AI as a consumer, as an energy consumer, this is an issue. We're going to discuss that. But on the other side, AI is also an opportunity for the power system, for the energy system. Once again, sorry for taking the example of my country, but in Uruguay today, 100% of the meters for all consumers are intelligent meters. So this brings an incredible opportunity to work with the demand and the provider in a complementarity of necessities and needs and possibilities, which is extraordinary. And for that, AI is a crucial tool in order to make us a consumer better consumers and better users as end users of the energy, much better. Not only the energy, also all kind of services. But there's the other side of the coin, which is the tremendous energy consumption by AI and the data centers, which is increasing exponentially all over the world. And once again, this is the question. I mean, are we going to do this? Are we going to feed these data centers with more fossil fuel thermal production or using renewables? And believe me, we can feed this data center just or almost just with renewable energy. And now we have the technologies in order to do this at lower cost and and with necessary confidence that the energy will be there. This is not a technology issue. It's just more a market design issue and a regulatory issue that we have to redefine. But we don't have to be afraid of that. I mean, AI is really a revolution that we are not just seeing today. We will only understand what is going on today in 10 years, in 20 years from now, I mean, 1 century from now. Because, I mean, what is going on is in a way similar to what happened in the Industrial Revolution 200 years ago, when human capacities, the body human capacity has been enhanced by machinery capacity. And now human intelligence is being increased using AI. So so the whole possibilities that open today when we have also this possibility of enhancing human intelligence using artificial intelligence. Well, it's unbelievable what we can do, and this is going to reshape completely also the energy market and the energy system. But for that, we need to use the new technology. We have to
Yeah.
use renewable-based economy.
Yeah, maybe. Thank you, Ramon. I think this is great, but maybe we can have a follow-up webinar only on AI. And we know the IEA is also doing a lot of research on AI and IRENA, etc. So maybe that's for another conversation. And I see that Anne Snick is also asking about, guess what, critical minerals. We didn't mention them yet, but she's asking about the need for renewable energy, batteries, e-cars. I would say that critical minerals are used not just for renewables, they are used for so many things, and even for the fossil fuel industry are important. And she's asking do you have those materials locally in Uruguay? And they are not renewable after all. So
No, thank you for the question. First of all, I have two answers for this question. First of all, no, we don't have any crucial material in Uruguay. But in fact, the big difference with the traditional fossil fuel era and fossil fuel industry and fossil fuel system is that when you depend on fossil fuels, every single day of your life, you depend on having fossil fuels, either your own fossil fuels or imported fossil fuels, depending on geopolitical crazy events that can happen all over the world. I'm not using the word crazy, thinking in any personal particularly. But when you're having renewables, you don't have to think about this every single day of your life. You just think the first day when you are installing the capacity. That's it. This is the end of the game. So, and what I'm trying to say here is that if things are happening the way they're happening all over the world today is because there is a dominant narrative. And this dominant narrative is saying, first, oh, renewables, yes, perhaps they're cheapest, but you cannot manage that variability. Or, oh yes, renewables are cheaper, but you need to use batteries. And when you put batteries, then they become more expensive. Or the new false narrative, oh, but you need new materials, you need raw materials that are very rare all over the world. So in order to have EVs, to have batteries, oh, this is a nightmare, it's impossible. This is just false narrative. Because for everything we are going to do in the world, we need raw materials. Some of them are abundant, some are not. And so this is just the dominant narrative put in counter examples in order to show why it's not impossible to build the new economy. But in fact, there are many studies showing that yes, of course, we have to deal with all kind of raw materials, but this is life. I mean, this is development. This is just everything that we need in order to be better in the world, not just because of renewable energies or EVs or batteries or whatever. And of course, the good news is that now, for example, we are developing batteries, solid state batteries that do not need the same materials. They are using much more abundant materials. So if there's a bottleneck in some particular mineral or whatever, then there will be new technologies, new development in order to do it with more abundant material, cheaper material, and when this scale up, costs are reduced. This is the economy rules, nothing more than that. So we have to continue building the new renewable-based economy. This is the point. The new renewable-based economy is ready today. It's not the future, it's the present. But we have to create the condition for the old economy not to continue overlapping the new one, and that not allow when the new better world, the new better economy to be there, to be here.
If I can add here just 2 minutes, Ramon, I think it's you presented very clearly, and I like this idea. You need certain materials to create a solar PV panel, but then you can recover, you can reuse, you can reutilize. So that's also very, very clear. And prices may vary, but you are talking about a new economy, and the new economy depends also. We are not going to create autarkies, and we are not going to be self-sufficient as a country or as a region. We live in an interconnected world, so we need to develop global value chains that are resilient and that are just and fair for consumers, for producers, and not just thinking on extractivism, that this is so far the bottom line with the fossil fuel economy. So I think that's kind of changing this narrative that you are describing perfectly, Ramon.
Thank you, Sophia. Thanks. This is crucial, yes, because we cannot continue thinking in the linear economy. We have to think about the circular economy. And if we think about the circular economy, I mean, it's not just needing raw material every single day. Once we have extracted minerals, we have to remanufacture them, reusing them, and this is something we know how to do it. But it depends on what kind of economy we want to build. If it's and not only from the producer point of view, but also from the consumer point of view. So what kind of world we need to work, what kind of production and consumption world we want to live, and that's why we cannot just thinking about the traditional linear economy. We have to think on the circular new economy. This is the goal.
And we have a very interesting question from a master's student from Serbia, Todor. I cannot really see your name, Pavlov. Sorry if I misspell it. So he wants your expert opinion on landfill gas to energy as a sustainable solution. So circular economy principles, or it's more a transitional stopgap.
So sorry, said it about what? Sorry, I couldn't.
Landfill gas to energy.
Okay.
From landfill
Yes.
gas to energy. So this is sustainable circular economy. Should it count towards national renewable energy targets? That's a very European question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is an European question in the sense that, I mean, landfill gas is not as wind and solar, which is the cheapest option. Landfill gas production and production of electricity on that is still a little more expensive than producing, for example, using solar and wind, or even sometimes fossil fuels. But why it is a very important question for Europe, for Singapore, for some small countries, because land use disposal of waste is very expensive. So you can subsidize reducing the size of your landfills, because this is a cost for your economy. In Latin America, for example, I have much more space, much more free space. So we can manage landfills in a different way, and subsidizing this is not always a good decision. But from a sustainable point of view, no doubt about it. And landfills are methane producers, big methane producers. And methane, you know that one molecule of methane has 28 times more climate effect than a CO2 molecule. So avoiding emission of methane is crucial. And landfills are about one third, landfills all over the world, emissions are about one third of human emissions of methane. So trying to do everything to make disappear methane emission from landfills is very important, and in particular producing and using the gas, the methane produced and capturing methane produced within landfills is certainly a very important contribution in order to stop climate change. Once again, today it's still still need to subsidize this in order to make it profitable. But once again, when you are doing more and more and more and scaling up this, the costs are going to reduce. And for sure, all the experiences you are gaining in many countries in Europe or in other countries, you for sure will profit on that all over the world.
Thank you, Ramon. I think it's super interesting and very clear. And we have another question from Hannah from Irina. She's asking about finance, and about how did you finance the energy transition in Uruguay, and the ideal mix, public, private debt, direct subsidies, grants, and how much did you rely on international financiers?
Well, it was very important. I mean, let me tell you what happened in Uruguay. In particular, it was about 2/3 of private international finance and 1/3 of national finance. Most of them from public finance. The point is that, I mean, the whole policy was built in order to put in the center public policies. Public policies were crucial. The role of the energy authority was crucial, but everything was done in permanent interaction with the private sector all the time. Every single regulation was deeply discussed with the private sector. We codified many of the rules of the game between the power and the private sector, and perhaps one of the most interesting things at the end of the day is that the answer of investor was so clear that we really understood that this learning curve that we were co-creating together were successful. At the end of the day, if money comes, I mean, this is the better answer of the private sector. But one important thing, and the private sector, it accepted it without any kind of problem, is that when you have clear public policy role and clear government role in the whole process, this gives insurance to. It's an insurance for it's a risk risk decrease for investors. So in fact, one very important thing that happened in Uruguay is that we have succeeded to have a long-term policy that was backed by the entire Uruguayan political system. The long-term policy that we launched in 2008 was backed in 2010 by all political parties represented in the parliament. So this was a big insurance for investors that this will be going to be a continuity in the policy. And in fact, I've been the Secretary of Energy of 2 consecutive presidents. This was I'm the example of the continuity of a process, and this was because there was a big political entente between all the political parties, and this was crucial. And on top of that, we put in the center that energy is a public service. Energy is not just is not a commodity, is not just a good to be traded in the market in a free way. So we invited the private sector to be part of the public policy. The policy was defined, and the architecture, everything was defined by the government within this big agreement between all political parties, with big discussion with people and with organization, and with the participation of the private sector. But when it was decided, then the private sector competed, but according to the rules of the game defined by the government. So, and put it in the center of everything, that energy is a public good. It's not just any kind of good. It's a public service, and this makes the difference because this help focus all investment in the specific direction of what the public policy was. And I think that it was really part of the game, and this was part of the success.
Thank you, Ramon. And I think this is truly inspiring, listening to what you're saying and defining energy as a public good. I think is and bringing the private sector and this not you mentioned before cannibalization, but in a different way. But in some cases, is these public-private partnerships don't work because one part of the partnership is eating the other. So that's
I can tell you why. It's very simple. Today, for the private sector, for investor, what is going on in the world, in the energy world? I mean, no one understands what is going on. So it's the opposite of clarity. And if it's the opposite of clarity, it's a huge risk for investor. We are having a big geopolitical mess. We are having a transition of technologies. We are having a transition in institution. So what kind of risk are you taking is something that you cannot even control. You cannot even have the tools in order to understand what the risks are. So if you have a country that defines the rules for the future, that agree all these rules with all participants, all the political system. This is a panacea for any investors. This is exactly what they want in a very messy world.
Yeah.
And so this is what happened in the Western countries today. That we're going from one government to the other, and the political shift 180 degrees. And so you go from it, and this can happen in the United States, in Europe, in Latin America, in many countries. And so this is the worst thing that can happen for an investor. That investment that can be paid back in 20 years long, 30 years long, they can change dramatically every 4 to 5 years. This is impossible. And this is, for example, why in other countries, I don't want to be politically incorrect, but in some countries where they don't have to vote every 4 to 5 years, then the continuity of the public policies is something that attracts investors. So what we have to learn in Western countries is that we need long-term policies, and long-term policies should be based on the benefits for our constituency, no matter if they vote left or right or whatever, is the benefits for our constituencies. And today, the new economy is the renewable-based economy. And this should lead our thought, no matter if you vote left or right. It's something have to do with our future, have to do with understanding what are the benefits are for our own interest as a country, for our independence, for our wellness, for whatever, for everything, for development, for whatever that we need. And so understanding what the benefits are, and this has to do with facing the dominant narrative. Now we have to build a new narrative. The new narrative is the renewable-based economy is ready to deliver.
Thank you, Ramon. That's really inspiring. And I cannot really add anything beyond this. And I also would like to give the opportunity to Frank in case he wants to ask you something.
Well, I think, before we conclude, Ramon, I think first I want to thank you. What a masterclass this has been. I think, there's so many takeaways, and I will do everything possible to make sure that this webinar event will be broadcast and shared with many others, because I think what you've been sharing today is so insightful, so inspirational, and so as you said, easy or ready to be implemented. Before I conclude, I had one question, and again, I want to be very laudatory for your approach. You have actually avoided, maybe somewhat against the spirit of Santa Marta, to be confrontational with the fossil fuel industry. Could you share a bit more about your approach and the outcomes of that approach?
Yes, when we created the Paris Agreement 11 years ago, we created the NDCs. NDCs are national determined contributions. This word contribution means that all countries, all governments, we committed to contribute to stop climate change. This contribution means that we have to stop some side of the economy in order to enhance another side of the economy. This is a contribution that we needed to make. Today, this is no longer the point. Today, we don't have to fight against a bad part of our economy. We just have to give space to the new part. So my strategy is not to attack the fossil fuel industry. My point of view is just to try the renewable-based economy to take place. That's it. And so I'm not fighting against fossil fuel lobby. I understand they are there. They have been very important for the human history for the last century. That's fine. I mean, I'm fine with that. But now, my role is not just to attack them, saying that they're the bad guys. and we have to avoid them or put in limits. No, we just have to give space for the new economy. That's it. But this need to take decision as for example, regulatory decision and market design redefinition, which in fact, yes, they will avoid fossil fuels to continue having the tremendous bias that the system has now in order to favor their continuity. This, in a way, is facing their power. But my goal is not to face the power to confront fossil fuels. My goal is just to make the new technology to take the place, nothing more than that, and to compete in equal footing with the traditional energy.
All right. Well, I think I would like to take this opportunity as we are reaching top of the hour. Both, yourself, Ramon, for this excellent masterclass. I think Uruguay and yourself, you deserve to be put on the Time magazine front cover for this achievement in these challenging times, and also, again, for conveying hope to especially the next generation of people. So I think if we're thinking about students and our children and grandchildren, I think this is a real inspirational kind of experience that you've been able to implement. And so all kudos to you. We'll also like to extend my gratitude to Sofia for not only bringing you to this platform, but also for this excellent moderation and taking and absorbing and integrating all these questions. I have about maybe 3 concluding remarks. I think, if we have 3 major takeaways, and I'm trying to be my best to summarize at the risk of maybe being incomplete. But one is, first of all, the importance of market design and the regulatory framework. I mean, like as I said, this is a very much given that we have a new emerging renewable energy system, what can we do in order to adjust our market system? The second one is your, threat to cannibalization. I think, and I said that the new system, has to be cognizant that the solution lies within the financial system and not within the constraints of the industrial system. I think, that's the second one. And the third one, I think it is very important, given, especially I'm thinking about some of the challenges being faced in Asian countries, but also in Latin American countries. Energy is not a commodity, but is this actually a public service that we should avail to every single individual citizen on Earth. So with that, I would like to really thank you, Ramon. I think, kudos, and really wishing you also fortitude with your future endeavors. And we can learn so much from you. So we hope to also continue and maybe build on this webinar today to integrate it as part of our solution framework within the Beyond Bretton Woods framework. Thank you again.
Words, and thank you for your excellent conclusion. Absolutely agree with them. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sofia, for inviting me.
Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.